Joining us now, former acting DHS Secretary, is Chad Wolf. It's good to see you, sir. Okay, let's get the update on the story we brought last night. Colorado Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. She's defending herself today against accusations she breached decorum, including chanting "Build the Wall" during the president's State of the Union address. Chad, let's watch what happened again. Let's watch.
We need to secure our border and fix the immigration system. Many of the world's fittest and best trained warriors in the world, never the same. Headaches, numbness, dizziness. A cancer that would put them in a flag-draped coffin. I know.
Chad, there's a lot of reaction against Congresswoman Boebert for that. She's saying that she had a right to say this. Your reaction to this?
Well, I would say a couple of comments. We know that members on both sides, depending on the administration, are obviously going to make some comments during the State of the Union. I don't think that that's anything new. Now, when she talks about building the wall, I think she's expressing frustration that I would say the overwhelming members of Congress have, and the overwhelming American public has, about the state of the border that it's currently in, and the fact that this administration has no strategy and no solution to fix the historic crisis down there. And then, her following comment regarding the 13 service members who died in Afghanistan, I think it's appropriate to express some concern there that the president missed just a big opportunity to give some thanks to those service members and to their families who died. He had time to mention electric vehicle charging stations, but he didn't have time in his speech to mention the service members that died in Afghanistan. I think that's wrong, and I think the American people believe it's wrong as well.
Speaker Pelosi today said, quote, "I agree with what Senator Lindsey Graham said, shut up. I think they should just shut up." Unfortunately, Speaker Pelosi, critics are saying, lost the moral high ground after she ripped up Trump's speech.
Well, absolutely. I think everyone witnessed that, and that was a step too far. Obviously, as the speaker doing that, right behind the president sends a different message than someone expressing their view in the well of the House. So I think the two are a little different. Obviously, they both occurred during the State of the Union, I don't know that Nancy Pelosi, as a speaker or just as a member, again, has that moral high ground to really talk about that.
Yeah, it's a place for decorum and civility. We understand that. There's also frustration. I mean, Representative Boebert said she's saying the mother of one of the fallen service members lives in her district, and that instead the president invited a big tech CEO to the State of the Union, but didn't recognize any of the families who lost a loved one in Afghanistan.
Well, that's exactly right. And when the White House was asked about this, their response to it was, well, the president didn't have time to mention everything that was important to him. But again, when you mention electric vehicle charging stations and environmental justice and other terms, and you don't have time to mention those service members who died in Afghanistan because of decisions that the president made, I think that's wrong, and I think that's the frustration that the Congresswoman was talking about, that numerous Americans have spoken about since that time in Afghanistan. And so I think it was a missed opportunity. I think the White House understands that that was a missed opportunity, and they're trying to backtrack because of it.
Representative Boebert, she chanted "Build the Wall." Washington Post reporting drug traffickers and human smugglers physically breached Trump's border wall more than 3,000 times between 2019 and 2021 using cheap power tools from hardware stores like drills and saws. Your response to this story?
So the border wall system, is always going to be defeated in one way or another, and that's not really the point. The point of building a border wall system, of not only having that physical infrastructure, but the roads and the cameras is for the impedance and denial for Border Patrol agents. As it takes longer and longer to defeat a border wall system, it allows those agents to come up to them, arrest those individuals, apprehend those individuals, and then remove those individuals from the country. And so it's about that impedance and denial that the border wall system provides. This idea that no one was ever going to defeat it ever is a fantasy. And, certain members of Congress and others like to talk about that and say, therefore, it's a failure. That's just not the case. DHS has never talked about it that way. The Border Patrol has never talked about it that way. So you really have to understand why you have a border wall system to begin with and what it provides a Border Patrol at the end of the day.
Yeah, because we have opioid deaths skyrocketing. Final word, quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. You have illegal narcotics coming across in big numbers because, again, you don't have a strategy to deal with the crisis and the cartels over the last 12 months.
Chad Wolf, great to see you. Come back soon.